Hey Brew Tubers, happy Homebrew Wednesday. Before I shoot you off to my footage from my Self-Righteous Wookey or Black IPA Brew Day for the SJ Porr Challenge, I thought I'd crack into one of SJ's beer they sent me quite a few months ago. This one is called Duke Special Belgian, named after, I believe, one of his dogs. And it was bottled 3 years ago on April 18th of 2011, and it clocked in 8% and 21 IBUs. So let's do a quick tasting out, and then I'll shoot you off to the footage. It's a beautiful, beautiful, but double or quad. Really nice dark fruits. Just right around like grape and cherry, and a really nice toffee, caramelly, almost date-like malt character. Really nice. Not too dry, not too sweet. Really nice. Definitely the favorite of the 4 I've tried so far. Anyway, so great beer. Cheers to SJ, and of course all you guys who are participating in the 2014 SJ Porr Challenge. And hope you enjoy the footage of my brew day.
It is time. It is time to brew your best beer.
Alright guys, so it's time to mash in. We're aiming for a mash temp of about 146, 147. So the water right now is about 157 and a half, 158. So put in part of the grain as usual. Mix it in. Have a little over 5 gallons in here, about 22 liters. So we're at like 148. So I'm gonna mix it up more. Okay. Alright guys, so I'm just gonna finish getting the dough balls out. Like I said, put my blanket on top that I usually put on top to hold temp, and I'll come back once, you know, I'm borlapping and getting ready to mash out. Alright? See you soon. Alright guys, so it's time to take the temp. I had to end up adding some extra time to the mash because I started heating up my mash out and sparred were a little late. So let's take the temperature of the mash and see where we're at after like 75 to 80 minutes. Alright, so I ended up leaving the mash in the beginning at about 148. So 147.8 or something like that. And now it's at like 146 point something. So I lost like 1.5 degrees, which is great. So I'm going to get it and boil off. The one thing I did wrong with my triple was I opened the valve too much, so I think I'm just going to collect my first runnings and the boil off slower this time so that I don't, you know, I don't have the trouble like I did last time collecting like the last 2 gallons of water. So let's get this is the first liter. It's really nice pitch black. Some of the darker malts I used. Again, I'm keeping the recipe kind of secret for now, at least. But you know, if you look up clone recipes for the Stone Sublimely Self-Righteous Black IPA and the Wookey and the Firestone Walker Wookey Jack, I'm pretty sure you'll be able to see which grain or grains are making this nice and dark. So I think I'm gonna get at least two or three liters in here before I actually collect my first runnings, because I had a lot of grain in it. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, and then once I'm collecting the first runnings, I'll show you what that looks like. Cheers. Alright guys, so I just had a huge fiasco with the mash out. What happened was I added in too much of the hot water, over 200-degree water, to raise the grain temp to 168. So I got 178. So I added too much cold water, and for over an hour I kept trying to add more and more hot water. It didn't work. Highest I got it, I think, was like 163. So I collected my 8 gallons and ended up getting, instead of my target of 1065 pre-boil gravity, I got 1057, which is 8 points off, which isn't terrible, but for my SJ Porr beer, it's a little disappointing not to hit my numbers. So what I might do is add a little bit of malt extract, or dry malt extract, just to bump up ABV a little bit, because or bump up the gravity a bit, so that, you know, the hops are supposed to shine in the black IPA. So if I hit most of the sugars that I was supposed to get anyway, I don't mind, because it's a 90-minute boil, so it should develop some malt complexity, especially because I got most of the gravity I was supposed to get. Instead of being off by like 20 numbers, so I'm off by 8. So yeah, so that's the deal. So I'll be back to you once we come up to a boil and you know, we've weighed out our hops. So I'm going to dunk here the 1.35 ounces of Chinook, as I said, into the, after putting them in the bag, into the pot, as I did with the barley wine, I don't know if you remember. And again, all these hops, except for 1 ounce of Amarillo going in later, all these hops are from YakimaValleyHops.com. So I know a lot of brew tubers have been utilizing their site, so go ahead and check out their site, because they have really good prices and an awesome selection of hops. Alright, so the next edition isn't for quite a while, so I'll be back with the next edition at about, I think all of them are from the 20-minute mark on. So this is the 90-minute mark. So I have like a good hour or so before I actually have to add anything else to the boil. So yeah, so I'll see you soon. Alright guys, so we're at the 60-minute mark of the 90-minute boil. I got, you know, as you saw, I added in the 1 pound of malt extract, or just over 1 pound of dry malt extract, to bring it back up to 1065. But I did, since I collected 8 gallons, I did get 76.8% mash efficiency. You know, you would think, you know, I was off by 8 points, but since I, you know, did still get my 8 gallons that Beersmith wanted me to, I still got pretty damn good efficiency for like just over 15 pounds of grain. So here in this little cup, which I now use as my hop cups, I have a teaspoon and a half of gypsum. And John at Bitter and Esther's said that it would be good to help the hops pop, or the hop flavor pop, in this really hoppy beer. So I'm going to add it in. Plus, New York water is very soft, so adding minerals to it actually will help. It. And I'm not adding any other minerals because the pH will be affected by the darker malts. So I'm just going to dump that in, and then just rinse out the glass, make sure I get all the gypsum-y goodness, if you want to call it that, out of the glass little cup. Alright. So as you see, we've added in the wort chiller, and it's time for the last hop addition, or last top secret hop addition. This is 2.8 ounces of hops. There's 3 different hops in here. 2 which would normally go with the clone recipes of Stone Sublime, Self-Righteous, and Firestone Walker Wookey Jack, but 1 hop I decided that I had in my freezer that would go well with this recipe. I'm adding in 3/4 of an ounce at flame out, and then I'm also going to be adding it in dry hopping, just to see, you know, how it goes with this recipe. So I opened the bag, and let's go ahead and dump it in the bag this time, and tighten the bag up, and then since we're doing this for flame out, shut the flames off and just let it sit there for a good 15 minutes or so to whirlpool. I couldn't find my Whirlfloc tablets, but I'm gonna whirlpool these hops just to try to get some of the proteins from the malt and whatever hops got in there when the bag got pulled down, or I missed the bag with the pellets. The 20-minute edition, I'm just gonna whirlpool this for a good 15 minutes before I start to chill, just to get as much out of those flame out hops, and to clarify the wort just a little bit. Alright guys, so it's time to aerate the wort. It's been a little over 18 hours since I fished the yeast into the starter. So I'm just gonna, I already hooked up my drill thing and sanitized it, so let's go ahead and aerate. Alright, it fell off, but that should be enough anyway. Pour it directly down into the fermenter. Since it didn't settle like my triple did, there's no big yeast cake at the bottom, it's just more cloudy at the bottom. Alright, so as you see, I got the store bar stuck to that little magnet, so we got all that yeast in there. Hey Brew Tuber, so this morning, Monday morning, when I checked the fermentation, it was just starting, and now at about 6 o'clock p.m. when I got home from work, I came home to this mess. So foam everywhere, tons of blow off. So I think I'm gonna have to drop in a few drops of firm cap into there to help the foam die down, but first I have to get everything cleaned up. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this cleaned up, and we'll be right back. So I hope you enjoyed watching my brew day footage. Everything went well, you know, considering the whole mash out fiasco where I missed my pre-boil gravity because of struggling to up the temperature of the mash out and not being able to, basically mashing for over an hour extra. But I shouldn't get too many tannins because I only pulled off, you know, what Beersmith told me to do, which was about 8 gallons. So I shouldn't have gotten any of the, you know, or enough of the extra water I added while I was struggling with the mash out temp to, get grain tannins in the beer anyway. And plus, it wasn't at that really high temp for very long. It was actually at the cooler temp for a really long time, and I was trying to raise it back to a reasonably high temp of 168, but it never got there. So that's that. And I felt anywhere between 8 and 12 points off my target OG, depending on whether I go by the refractometer or the hydrometer. But in that range, 8 to 12 points, which isn't terrible per se, because it's a big beer. But I did one test today, which Tuesday night, which will help me in the future. Which is what I did was to know to do that test was I went on Homebrew Talk, posted a thread to say I added dry malt extract to correct my pre-boil gravity and still didn't get my target original gravity at the end. So when the one guy that responded said that you should check your evaporation rate by putting 5 gallons of water in your brew pot, boiling it for an hour, and seeing how much is left. So on the setting on my stove, which I put my 2 burners on because I have a wide pot, it's just below full blast, and it gave me a 20% evaporation rate, which is pretty high. Most people try to hit around 15. So what I might do before the next time I brew a big batch in that pot is to do one more test where I bring it to a boil at that setting on the stove on the 2 burners, but lower it to 1 notch below. Or maybe 2 notches. I'll just have to look at what the boil looks like with 1 notch and then 2 notches below, and then once I decide, I'll boil it for an hour and then see what the evaporation is again, and if it's lower, and then I put it to Beersmith and I'm happy with the numbers it gives me, then I'll move forward from there. But for now, that's where it's at. And as you saw, the beer, my Self-Righteous Wookey Black IPA, or Black Rye IPA, I should say, is fermenting quite vigorously. So, it should attenuate down. The strain I'm using, the Yeast 1098, should attenuate down pretty far, especially with the active starter that I put in. So, yeah. So that about wraps it up before I start rambling on. I definitely will brew this recipe again, just, especially if it comes out good, but also to try to refine my brewing techniques when brewing this style of beer, or any beer for that matter. So cheers, happy Homebrew Wednesday. I look forward to watching more of your guys' videos about the SJ Porr Challenge, and I'll see you next week.
It is time. It is time to brew your best beer.